Welcome to another FPL video, a transfer tips ahead of Game Week 35. We're going to cover 12 players as usual, free to buy, hold, sell and skip. The skip section will be slightly different where it's a skip for now for some of these players, but we can keep an eye on them and potentially buy them in the weeks to come. So let's get straight into this. First up, we have Kevin De Bruyne. It's very hard to ignore the fixtures that he has on offer. That double against Wolves will fall under either Game Week 36 or 37. He's got 158 points so far, in limited minutes should we add, because he didn't play for a portion of this season due to injury and other reasons. And also, his returns since Game Week 28 have been amazing. He's actually got 2 double-digit returns in that time period, as well as 2 9-pointers and a 6-pointer. Only 1 blank in that time is crazy, and he has probably been one of the most informed players in the league, and he has been such a big part of City's title push at the very end, and it's going to go down to the wire. His stats across the season are decent, especially in terms of the goal output. The XG and the XA are good, but nothing special. And I say good, but maybe the XG isn't that great actually. 2 big chances is very surprising. I think actually in the last few seasons, that figure was much higher, but his XG isn't necessarily so high with the goals that he scores, but he's so good with long distance shots, a bit similar to Messi for example, and 11 big chances created. Of course, his creativity is always a big factor, and that assist for Gabriel Jesus, I mentioned it in the last video as well, was stunning, and 71 key passes in only 26 games is very impressive. So if you're looking for a premium, De Bruyne is the one to go for. Sterling, I actually backed quite a lot against Watford, and he has a great record against them, but he didn't do the business. But De Bruyne did once again, and I think he is the City midfielder to go to. There is Phil Foden, so if you can't afford De Bruyne, he might be a decent substitute for him, but ultimately you're not going to find anyone who can get that level of consistency and also the sheer ceiling that he offers, which is so high. So therefore, I think De Bruyne is the premium to go to right now, even if it means selling the likes of Kane or Son. I don't think we need to go off all these Spurs assets, as we'll talk about very soon, but City midfield is where it's at, I think, especially with Kevin De Bruyne. We have another Manchester City player in this buy section. Aymeric Laporte is priced at 6 million and he is the 5th highest scoring defender in FPL this season with 138 points. Now, I've talked about him a few times in these videos and his stats aren't anything amazing. His XG is almost free, which to be fair for a centre-back is quite impressive, and he's got 3 goals, so that matches the underlying numbers. 2 assists, although his XA is not even 1. 5 big chances and 0 big chances created. These are still okay for a centre-back, and he's got that aerial prowess. He is probably the much better option in terms of goal threat compared to Ruben Dias. And also this season, Laporte has been more nailed for one reason or another. Dias being injured, sometimes coming off the back of international duty and being benched. Laporte has been the main centre-back for Manchester City, for good or for bad, but Manchester City is still arguably the best defensive team in the league alongside Liverpool. And I think he is just a great buy. If you're looking to sell someone like Reece James, Laporte could be a good like-for-like replacement. Yes, he's not going to offer the same level of attacking threat, especially when it comes to the assists, but he is still a really good option. And actually, I've said this a lot of times before, I would rather have Laporte over Cancelo than go for Matip over Trent or Robertson. Now, Matip is also a very good option, and I'd recommend buying him if you don't have any Liverpool players already, and also if you don't have the funds to get a Liverpool fullback or the second one. But I would go for Aymeric Laporte if you wanted to get a Manchester City asset. They're going to have a double very soon. That should be confirmed within, hopefully, the next week or two. We just don't know yet, but ultimately, Laporte is a buy. I would recommend caution with this one because Bukayo Saka does have a knock, and this happened after the Chelsea game, so he was playing that Manchester United fixture with a small injury, and he came off a bit early. He seemed to walk fine afterwards, but I would just recommend caution before buying him. So once there's confirmation that he's fit and available for that West Ham game, I would highly recommend buying him. Now, I don't suddenly think we need to double or triple up on Arsenal once again because they've been such an inconsistent team, especially recently. But West Ham have no fit centre-back, with Craig Dawson being sent off against Chelsea, and Bukayo Saka is, for me, Arsenal's best attacking player and their biggest threat. So FPL-wise, of course, he is the highest scoring player in the midfield. He's got an XG of almost 10, it's just over 9, an XA of just under 8, 9 big chances and 8 big chances created. His goal output has increased a lot from last season. Now, Arsenal are still a very inconsistent team, so just watch yourself there. But around that price, I mean, who is better, really? In my opinion, not anyone, actually. Maybe Kulusevski is right up there with him, and a few others like Coutinho with all the doubles he has. But ultimately, I think Saka is probably the best midfielder around his price, and I would buy him, but only once he's cleared to play. I personally think he will be fit for that West Ham game, but I would still recommend caution before you actually end up buying him. Everyone's going cold on the Spurs assets, just a bit similar to how Arsenal, all their assets seem useless after their 3 defeats in a row. I still think that Spurs offer great value, the likes of Son, Harry Kane and Kulusevski, but some of you may have tripled up and you obviously benefited from it at one point in the season, but now it's not looking as profitable, and I think you would want to trim it down to 2 or 1. Now I would try to keep Heung-min Son if possible. His double isn't great in 36, but he can still haul against both teams, especially Arsenal, and he's got great fixtures before and afterwards, and he offers such great value. But if you want to get to someone like Kevin De Bruyne and you've got the funds to do so, in that case I would consider selling him. But otherwise, if it's not for De Bruyne or Salah, I probably wouldn't be interested, and I would keep Heung-min Son over every other player in the midfield position, even Bukayo Saka. He's got 17 goals and 8 assists, so he's got one of the highest goal contribution rates of any player this season. An XG of just over 13, his XA, similar to Saka, just under 8. 22 big chances and 9 big chances created. Son is just lethal, and yes, he probably should have even more goals, when you look at the big chances and also how many goals he's actually scored, but he's still clinical, and he is one of the best midfielders across the last few seasons in FPL. I'm surprised he was actually priced at around 10 million. He's probably going to be 11 in the next season. I ultimately think he's worth holding on to, but if it's for Salah or for Kevin De Bruyne, like I said before, that's when I would consider selling him. A bit similar to Heung-min Son, Ivan Toney has blanked in his last 2 games, but just before that period, he was showing a lot of consistency, and I still think he's one of the best strikers in the game. He doesn't have a double in 36, so if you're looking to bench boost and you really want to maximise that chip and go for a lot of double game week players, then fair enough, you could sell Ivan Toney, but why would you sell him, in my opinion, if he's showing form? Yes, he hasn't scored in the last 2 games, but he was very unlucky against Spurs. He hit the post, I think, twice, and his XG, his XA, all these figures are pretty good for a budget striker. 15 big chances as well, and Ivan Toney has been a different beast since coming back from injury, and even just before that, he was showing a bit of consistency as well. So for me, Ivan Toney is worth keeping. He does face Man United away, but that's not really the worst fixture in the world right now, and he's got great fixtures to wrap up the season. So unless you really want to go for double game week players and go overboard on that, I would keep Ivan Toney. Emmanuel Dennis is still the 3rd highest scoring forward in FPL, which is in a way surprising, but then when you look at it, probably not, due to the sheer inconsistency from the forwards. He started the season very cheap, around 5.5 million. He is at 5.8 now. He's got returns in his last 2 games, including that match against Manchester City. His stats are okay, especially when you look at someone around this price, but when you compare it to Ivan Toney, for example, yes, there is quite a big difference there in terms of big chances, the XG and the XA as well. 10 goals and 7 assists though, that's still a very healthy return. Watford are probably going to go down to the Championship, but they have some great fixtures to wrap up the season and a decent double in 36, and I think Dennis could do very well in all of these fixtures. Even Chelsea away, there is a possibility for the Nigerian to do well there. So I would personally hold on to Emmanuel Dennis, and for some of you who are looking to get a forward that doubles in 36, that has good fixtures overall, I think Emmanuel Dennis is one of the better ones, and he's an enabler. He's around a similar price to Timo Pukki, and he's actually showing a bit of consistency recently. I don't think he'll necessarily score or assist in every single game until the end, but he could get some returns in that time period. I think he will, and therefore I think he's worth holding on to. Despite my kind of rank gains in the last 10 game weeks, you could say, since I played my wildcard, Reece James has been one of the worst transfers I've made, and that was in Game Week 31. Ever since then, he has accumulated just 1 point so far. He missed out in the first game of Game Week 34. He should be back for the second game, and I would back him to even start against Everton, but let's wait and see first. But Thomas Tuchel did say that they're just managing Reece James and that he has no injury, but it's all a precaution and they're trying not to overwork him, but he does seem quite injury prone. Yes, he's played a lot of games over the last few years, and it's not like he constantly gets injured, but every season, he gets a few of these, and even this campaign alone, it's been quite frustrating to own Reece James. It's kind of a stop-start kind of campaign. He showed his class in one period where he was absolutely exceptional, him and Ben Chilwell, but he did get an injury from that point onwards, and it's kind of been a struggle to get him back onto the pitch. And then once he gets that 18 points against Burnley, quite recently, I think in double game week 28, he then gets another kind of injury, and he's coming back from that right now. He's been playing as a right centre-back to not put too much pressure on him. Obviously, a right wing-back position is very demanding, especially with how important Reece James is to Chelsea's attack. He's actually 6.4 million, so he went up in price over the last week or two, but Marcos Alonso is clearly, at the moment anyway, the best Chelsea defender to own, and despite the fact that I think Reece James will start the next 2 games, and I could be wrong about that, it's just constantly, a headache, whether Reece James is going to start a game or not, and if you don't have Robertson or Trent or Cancelo, I would easily go to any of them without any hesitation. Other than that, you could maybe just keep on to Reece James, and it's not the worst hold in the world, let's say, and he can definitely put in some really big performances, and once you sell him, you might end up regretting it potentially. But I personally think those three fullbacks I just mentioned are better options than Reece James. They're going to get more clean sheets. In terms of attacking returns, probably the same or even more, because they're going to play more minutes, and ultimately Reece James is a very frustrating player at the moment, and I just don't know. Even if he plays the next 2 games, I don't know if he's going to play the next one and play both in double game week 36, and therefore I think he's worth selling. Bruno Fernandes from last season compared to this campaign is like chalk and cheese. Now, he hasn't been completely woeful in this campaign. He's got 9 goals and 7 assists with some good underlying numbers. His XG is 8.62 and his expected assists is just over 10. 12 big chances and 15 big chances created. I think he has been somewhat unlucky in terms of his returns, but in terms of the goals, that is purely down to Bruno Fernandes' finishing. Ronaldo, for example, has created many chances for him, and Bruno hasn't taken them. He missed that crucial penalty against Arsenal, which could be massive for both clubs until the end of the season, and he's got 86 key passes, to be fair. His creativity has been slightly let down by the finishing around him, but overall, I just don't think Bruno Fernandes is worth keeping. And those of you that sold Salah to get Bruno in Game Week 33, it made sense. I don't really blame you for that. I would have considered something similar if I still had the wild card in my back pocket, but ultimately, someone like Salah, you just can't sell with the form he's in and the team he plays for, compared to Bruno Fernandes, who plays in a dysfunctional United team and that is struggling for confidence himself. So for me, Bruno Fernandes is a sell. You have to learn from these things, and also sometimes football, it's all down to fine margins. Bruno had a really good chance against Arsenal. If he takes that away, that's a really big return already, and if he scores that penalty. And the Bruno of old, you could say, would have scored those chances, but every player goes through the ups and downs, even the very best of all time. So for me personally, Bruno Fernandes is a sell. This may seem like a very obvious one, but Antonio is still owned by 27.1% of the game. And I just asked myself why. Yes, he's gone down in price a lot. He's 7.4 million. And his overall numbers, his goal output is still very good. 17 goal contributions in 32 games is nothing to be sniffed at. But he's just been woeful for a long period of time. He's only got 1 goal contribution since Game Week 28, and that was an assist. So he's just not worth it. His XG, his XA, yeah, they're all good. 17 big chances, but Antonio's just been awful. In the first 3 game weeks, I thought, wow, what is this Antonio that's coming about? I thought he was actually a really good, probably a seasoned keeper in that position, but ultimately it hasn't worked out, and West Ham are ultimately focusing on the Europa League, so I wouldn't be surprised if they bench their team against the likes of Arsenal even, especially if the game against Frankfurt doesn't go according to plan. So for me personally, I would sell Mikel Antonio and probably all West Ham assets, even Jarrod Bowen, although he's still the best of the lot. After his 24-point haul against Watford, Gabriel Jesus is now the 6th highest scoring forward in Fantasy Premier League. And look, I would love to recommend him and say you have to get the Brazilian, but he's only got 2 starts since Game Week 22. So once we see a bit of consistency in terms of minutes, that's when I would say, you know what, great price, lack of forwards, playing for Manchester City, great fixtures, I would highly recommend him, but he might even get a cameo or a big appearance against Real Madrid in the Champions League, and therefore his minutes in the Premier League will be impacted as well. City boast a lot of options. Gabriel Jesus is linked to a move to Arsenal in the summer, and to be fair, I don't think a lot of Gunners would mind that at the moment, and his stats are pretty good considering the lack of minutes. 24 games seems like a lot, but in reality, if you actually factor in the amount of minutes, it probably would constitute to even fewer games, probably 16 or something like that. So 7 goals and 8 assists, pretty impressive stuff. His XG is just over 8, 11 big chances, and Gabriel Jesus is the ultimate fox in the box. He scores pretty much all of his goals inside the penalty area, which is absolutely insane, and keep an eye on him. This is the first example really of someone on the skip section being someone to keep an eye on, but right now I just can't say buy him when he's got 2 starts since Game Week 22. I would love to say he's worth it, and he could be, but right now I would just wait a little bit, try not to be too reactionary, and just keep an eye on the Brazilian first, and then maybe in the weeks to come you can buy him once he gets more minutes. It seems to be Manchester City players galore in this video, but unfortunately with Riyad Mahrez, it's not the same as Gabriel Jesus. I just don't see Riyad Mahrez getting too many minutes in the Premier League because he is favoured in the Champions League instead, and he doesn't really get those minutes that he deserves in the Premier League. In 25 games, a bit similar to Jesus, it's not really 25 games when you look at it because his minutes have been so limited, but 11 goals and 6 assists. His XG is almost 9, his expected assists is just under 5, 12 big chances, so very similar stats actually to the Brazilian, but ultimately I wouldn't go for for Riyad Mahrez. I just don't see him getting the minutes that are enough for him to warrant that hefty price tag. And I say hefty because it's not really worth it. When you compare him to the likes of De Bruyne at around 11.8 million, he's nailed. He's worth that extra 3 million pretty much on Riyad Mahrez. You look at Heung-min Son around 11 million. He's another one. Mohamed Salah. And those around 7.7 million or 7 million like Mason Mount, Kai Havertz, etc. They're just going to be more nailed than Riyad Mahrez. So for me personally, as much as I'd love to recommend Riyad Mahrez, as I do in UCL Fantasy, I can't do the same in FPL. Jamie Vardy made a 1-minute cameo in Gameweek 34. He is back. He has to build that fitness up. He's been having constant injury issues, which is a big shame. He's only got one start since Gameweek 21, which is awful, really. I cannot recommend him right now, but just like Gabriel Jesus, I would keep an eye on him. He could be amazing for double Gameweeks 36 and 37. You know, we have a lack of forward options, especially in terms of the premium ones. You know, that double in 36 and 37 that have good fixtures. Well, Vardy ticks both boxes, so just keep an eye on this guy. We all know what he's capable of, but it's very hard for me to say buy him right now and buy him ahead of the curve when he probably won't even start in the next game. And if he does, he'll probably be taken off a little bit earlier, and he might even get that recurring injury issue once again. So it's very hard for me to just say buy him right now. Keep an eye on him instead, and maybe and hopefully he is back in time for Gameweeks 36 and 37 and he can disrupt the system. His stats are pretty decent. 19 games, he's got 10 goals and 2 assists. I had him actually at one point in the season. 6.33 XG, his XA is 2. Those stats aren't too good, the underlying numbers, but the goal output is 11 big chances. And ultimately, I think Vardy, I'd love to recommend him, and hopefully he's back fit and can play those full 90s because he's one of the best strikers in the league. But right now, skip him. What do you think of all of these picks and, which section they fell under? Let me know down in the comment section below. And if there's any other players that you think are worth mentioning, like Joel Matip, for example, that's gone under the radar, then I'd be very curious to see your thoughts. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, for all the latest FPL, UCL Fantasy news, and to share our opinions and also our thoughts. I'll also be sharing my teams on there as well. And also on the channel, be sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss a single upload or stream. There's probably going to be F1 fantasy content over the next few weeks, especially during the summer when we have no more football once the Premier League and Champions League concludes. But there's going to be a UCL fantasy stream today actually, so check that out. It'll be a pleasure to have you on there. All the very best of luck for double Gameweek 34. There's still one more game left for that, and also for Gameweek 35, and same with UCL Fantasy Matchday 11. Enjoy the football as always, and I'll see you next time.